Hi, I'm David.
And I'm Carter.
And today we're doing our MAF and MAP sensor labs.
Alright, so today we're going to be looking at our mass airflow meter today, and we're going to be looking at each point. So right here, we're going to have our wire color is going to be black and white, and that's going to be for our supply voltage. For down here, we have VG standing for our signal to the PCM for our MAF sensor, and that's going to be a red wire. Our E2G is going to be our ground for the MAF, and that's going to be a blue and a white wire. THA and E2 are going to be for our IAT system, and THA is going to be our signal to the PCM, which is going to be a blue and a black wire. And then our ground is going to be a brown wire for E2.
So before we test any mass airflow sensors on any vehicles, we're going to be bench testing my 2005 Toyota Camry's mass airflow sensor outside of the vehicle. First, we're going to be testing our pins 4 and 5 on our mass airflow sensor, the THA and the E2. These pins should be for our intake air temperature, and right now we're reading a resistance of about 2.24 kilo ohms, which would indicate a reading of about 60 degrees Fahrenheit. So now we're going to be bench testing our mass airflow meter. We have our yellow lead hooked up to our terminal 1 for our positive battery voltage. We have our black lead hooked up to our terminal 2 for negative battery voltage, and our red lead for terminal 3 going to our voltmeter, which should be our signal wire. And then we have our black multimeter lead going to our ground. So we're reading about 0.6 volts with this connected, and as we blow air through the sensor, we should be able to see our voltage change.
Alright, so right now we're just verifying our supply voltage, and we're getting around 11.9, so basically 12 volt. Alright, we're getting around half a volt for our key on, engine off. And here we're going to be looking at the engine at idle. And our MAF sensor sitting at around 1.25 volts.
So now David's going to hold the engine at 2,000 RPMs. And as you can see, we're reading about 1.75 volts.
Alright, here we can see our mass airflow sensor reading as well as our intake air sensor. And we can see right here that it's sitting around 3. And that shows us basically it's just in grams per second, and it should be in correlation to the displacement of the engine, which is a 3 liter. So should be good. And then when I go to hold the engine at 2K RPM, we can see that it goes up because our correlation for the MAF sensor is as more air comes in, that reading's going to go up because there will be more air being pulled into the engine.
Now we're going to be grounding our mass airflow sensor signal circuit with a 12 volt test light, and we're going to see what happens. And it shut the engine off, so the car is no longer running.
Alright, so this is our pin layout for the MAP sensor and the IAT sensor. Our first pin is going to be our power source for the IAT. Our second is going to be the ground for the IAT and the MAP. Our third is going to be our signal wire for the MAP sensor, and our fourth is going to be power for the MAP sensor, and normally it's going to be 5 volts.
So here we're reading our signal wire with the connector disconnected, and we're reading about 24 millivolts. So here we're measuring our 5 volt power supply going to our MAP sensor, which is also our intake air temperature sensor. So we have our sensor 1, our pin number 4 on our sensor connector back probed. It is our green and black wire, and we're reading about 5 volts with the key on, engine off. Okay, so here we're measuring the voltage of our MAP sensor signal wire. This will be the red and brown wire on our 2017 Subaru, and we're reading about 1.969 volts. So next we are looking for our MAP sensor signal return / ground, which is going to be our black and yellow wire, and then our signal wire for the MAP sensor is going to be our red and yellow, or red and brown wire. This is our MAP reading at idle in volts. Currently we're reading about 3/4 of a volt. Now we're going to be looking at our MAP voltage under load at about 2,500 RPMs or 15 inches of vacuum. As you can see, we increased voltage to about 0.78 from 0.75. You can also see that it jumped up to around 0.88 volts. All right, so now we're getting our voltage readings of our MAP sensor while David opens and closes the throttle. A few more times. As you can see, the highest voltage we increased to is about 1.4 volts.